There is a mechanism inside every woman that decides whether she will bond to a man or forget him by morning. Most men never discover what triggers it. They spend years doing everything right and getting nothing back. Today, I am going to show you exactly how this mechanism works. And I am going to show you through the story of a man who broke it open by accident. His name is Daniel, 34 years old. Architect at a firm that designs buildings you have seen in magazines. Salary deep into 6 figures. Apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river. Body carved from 5 years of discipline. Wardrobe selected piece by piece with intention. Daniel did everything the world told him would make women want him. He became impressive. He became accomplished. He became the man who walks into a room and gets noticed. And for 9 years, he could not make a single woman fall in love with him. They liked him. They dated him. They slept with him. They introduced him to their friends as this amazing guy I am seeing. But something was always missing. A coldness underneath the warmth. A distance he could feel but never name. Daniel would take women on dates that cost more than some people's rent. He would listen carefully, ask the right questions, remember the details, follow up thoughtfully. He would do everything the relationship advice told him to do. And still, one by one, they would fade, they would pull back, they would deliver some version of the same speech. I think you are wonderful, but I am just not feeling it. Daniel heard that sentence so many times it started to sound like a verdict. Like there was something fundamentally wrong with him that no amount of success could fix. What Daniel did not understand was that he was operating on a broken model. A model that almost every man believes. A model that guarantees failure. Machiavelli wrote in The Prince that men judge by appearances. They see what you seem to be. But he also wrote something deeper. He wrote that the few who understand what you truly are will never dare contradict the many who see only the surface. Daniel was all surface. Impressive surface. Polished surface. But underneath, something was hollow. And women could feel it even when they could not explain it. Robert Greene calls this the law of defensive behavior. When you try too hard to prove your value, you create suspicion. You signal that your value needs proving. You announce through your effort that you do not believe in your own worth. Daniel's entire dating life was a presentation. A carefully constructed argument for why he deserved to be chosen. And every time he made that argument, he lost the case. Because women do not bond to arguments. They do not attach to evidence. They do not fall in love with resumes. Women bond to something far more primitive, something that operates below language, below logic, below conscious awareness. Schopenhauer identified it 2 centuries ago. He called it the will, the fundamental drive that exists beneath all human behavior. He argued that we do not want things because we have reasons. We have reasons because we want things. The wanting comes first. The logic comes after, invented to justify what we already feel. This is how female attachment works. The feeling comes first. The reasons come after. A woman does not evaluate a man's qualities and then decide to bond. She bonds first, unconsciously, automatically. Then her mind creates reasons to justify the bond. Daniel was trying to create reasons. He was trying to build a logical case. He was trying to earn attachment through evidence. But attachment does not work that way. You cannot argue your way into a woman's heart. You can only trigger the response that opens it. And what triggers that response has nothing to do with what Daniel was doing. I want to be clear about something before we continue. This is not a story about manipulation. This is not about tricks or tactics or techniques that fool women into feeling something false. This is about understanding the actual psychology of attachment, the real mechanisms, the deep structures that have existed for thousands of years. And it is about how one man discovered those structures by accident and transformed his entire experience with women. The philosophers understood this. Nietzsche wrote about the difference between the man who seeks power over others and the man who seeks power over himself. The first is weak. The second is dangerous. The second is magnetic. Daniel was about to learn this distinction in the most painful way possible, because something happened that shattered everything he believed. Something that made him question every assumption he had about attraction, about women, about himself. And when he rebuilt from the wreckage, he became someone new. Someone who did not chase. Someone who did not perform. Someone who triggered the bonding response without trying. That is what this story is about. Not how to trick women. How to become the kind of man they bond to naturally. The ancient Stoics taught that we suffer not from events, but from our judgments about events. Daniel was about to experience an event that would destroy him, but it would also free him. Because sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is the best thing that happens to you. Stay with me. What happened next changed everything. Daniel had been seeing a woman named Rachel for 3 months. 31 years old, attorney at a corporate firm. Sharp, beautiful, ambitious. The kind of woman who made other men nervous. Daniel thought they were building something real. She had met his friends. He had met her sister. They had talked about a trip to Portugal in the fall. The relationship had momentum. Or so he believed. On a Friday night in October, they went to a gallery opening. One of Daniel's clients was showing work. He wanted Rachel there. He wanted to share that part of his world with her. The gallery was crowded. Wine and small talk and people pretending to understand art. Daniel worked the room. He knew how to do this. Introduce Rachel. Make her feel included. Show her off a little without being obvious. About an hour in, Daniel went to find more wine. When he came back, Rachel was talking to someone. A man Daniel did not recognize. Late 20s, maybe. Worn leather jacket. Hair that looked like he had just woken up. Nothing impressive about his appearance. But something about Rachel was different. Daniel watched from across the room. He watched her lean in when this man spoke. He watched her laugh in a way she never laughed with him. He watched her touch her neck, her hair, her collarbone. Unconscious signals. Signals Daniel knew how to read. His chest tightened. A cold feeling spread through his stomach. He walked over, introduced himself. The man's name was Thomas. He worked at a used bookstore. He made probably $20 an hour. He had none of the markers Daniel had spent his life accumulating. But Thomas had something Daniel did not understand yet. Thomas was completely at ease. Not performing ease, not pretending relaxation. Genuinely, deeply comfortable in his own skin. He talked to Rachel the same way he would talk to anyone. No special effort. No extra attention. No trying. Daniel watched Rachel transform in Thomas's presence. She became lighter, more playful, more feminine. Her voice changed. Her body language changed. She was showing Thomas a version of herself Daniel had never seen. And Thomas barely seemed to notice. That was the thing. He was not reacting to her beauty the way most men reacted. He was not adjusting his behavior to keep her interested. He was just present, just himself. Take it or leave it. Daniel tried to enter the conversation. He said something about the art, about his client, about his work on the project. He was trying to re-establish his position, trying to remind Rachel of his value. But every word he spoke felt wrong, heavy, effortful. He could hear himself trying too hard. He could feel Rachel's attention drift back to Thomas, even while she looked at Daniel. They left the gallery an hour later. Rachel was quiet in the car. Daniel asked if she was okay. She said she was tired. 2 weeks later, she ended things. "I care about you. I think you are incredible. But I just do not feel that connection. I am sorry." Daniel learned through mutual friends that she had started seeing Thomas, the bookstore guy, the man with nothing. He spent months trying to understand what happened. He analyzed every interaction. He reviewed every text message. He searched for the mistake he must have made. But the mistake was not in any single moment. The mistake was in everything. His entire approach. His entire way of being. Carl Jung wrote about the shadow. The part of ourselves we refuse to see. The part we hide from our own awareness because it threatens the story we tell about who we are. Daniel's shadow was his need. His desperate, hidden need for external validation. He had built his entire life around proving he was worthy. Worthy of success. Worthy of respect. Worthy of love. And that need leaked through everything he did. Rachel did not leave Daniel for Thomas because Thomas was better. She left because Thomas was different in a fundamental way. Thomas did not need her approval. Thomas did not need anyone's approval. He had achieved what Nietzsche called the revaluation of all values. He had stopped measuring himself by external standards. That freedom was what Rachel responded to. Not the leather jacket, not the artistic lifestyle, the inner state that produced total ease. Freud identified this dynamic a century ago. He called it the narcissism of small differences. We are most attracted to people who are similar enough to understand, but different enough to fascinate. And the biggest difference is not external. It is internal. It is the presence or absence of need. Daniel needed Rachel to validate him. Thomas did not need anything from her. That difference was everything. This is what Machiavelli meant when he wrote that the man who adapts his conduct to the times will succeed, while the man who is inflexible will fail. Daniel was inflexible in his need. He could not stop seeking approval because he did not know he was seeking it. The gallery night broke him, but it also cracked him open. Because Daniel finally asked the right question. Not, "What did I do wrong?" but "What am I that pushes women away?" The answer was hiding in his shadow, and he was about to drag it into the light. Daniel started reading. Not relationship advice, psychology, philosophy, the deep structures underneath human behavior. He found something that changed how he understood attraction. Something hidden in texts most people never read. Schopenhauer wrote about the will to life, the fundamental drive that exists in all living things, the drive to survive, the drive to reproduce, the drive that operates beneath conscious awareness and controls far more than we realize. In women, this drive expresses itself through attachment. But attachment is not random. It is not based on logic. It is triggered by specific signals that have evolved over thousands of generations. Here is what Daniel discovered. Women do not attach to what a man has. They attach to what a man is. More specifically, they attach to a man's internal state, his relationship with himself, his degree of self-possession. Robert Greene writes in The Art of Seduction about the importance of creating absence. He argues that desire requires space. When you are always present, always available, always pursuing, you leave no room for desire to grow. But Daniel realized it goes deeper than tactics. Greene is describing a symptom, not the cause. The cause is internal state. A man who is truly self-possessed naturally creates space. He does not chase because he does not need to chase. His absence is not strategic. It is authentic. This distinction matters. Women can sense the difference between manufactured distance and genuine independence. Manufactured distance is a trick. Genuine independence is a state of being. Thomas at the gallery was not playing hard to get. He was not using techniques. He simply did not need Rachel's validation. That indifference was not performed. It was real. And that reality triggered something in Rachel's unconscious mind. Jung called it the animus, the masculine principle that exists in every woman's psyche. Women are unconsciously searching for the external expression of this internal ideal. When they encounter a man who embodies it, something happens beneath their awareness. The bonding response activates. What does the animus look like in the real world? Groundedness, stability, quiet power, a man who is complete in himself, a man who does not need anything from anyone, a man who could walk away without breaking. Daniel had none of this. He was a bundle of needs wrapped in impressive packaging. Every achievement was a bid for approval. Every date was an audition. Every relationship was an attempt to fill a hole inside himself. Women could feel that hole even when Daniel smiled. They could sense the emptiness beneath the success. Hobbes wrote that the life of man is a perpetual search for power after power. But Hobbes also understood that the man who seeks power from others will never find rest. The only stable power is power over the self. Daniel had spent 30 years seeking power from external sources. Achievements, status, female attention. He had built an empire of external validation, and it was worthless because the women he wanted could feel his hunger. They could sense that he was trying to take something from them. Validation, confirmation, proof that he was worthy. And that taking was repellent. Not consciously, unconsciously. At the level where attraction lives, Epictetus taught that we cannot control external events. We can only control our judgments and our will. This is not just philosophy. This is the foundation of attraction. A man who seeks control over externals is weak. His happiness depends on things outside himself. His emotional state rises and falls with circumstances. Women sense this instability and pull away. A man who has mastered himself is different. His state is stable regardless of what happens around him. He does not need circumstances to be a certain way. He does not need women to respond a certain way. He is complete without them. This completeness is the trigger. This is what activates the bonding response. Daniel understood the concept. But understanding is not transformation. He could explain what was wrong with him. He could describe the problem perfectly. But he could not stop being the problem. Because his need was not a choice. It was a structure, built over decades, reinforced by every achievement, every success, every moment he felt good, because something external told him he was worthy. Albert Ellis, the psychologist who created rational emotive therapy, identified the core irrational beliefs that cause human suffering. One of them is the belief that we must be approved of by others to be worthwhile. Ellis showed that this belief is not just wrong, it is the source of most psychological problems. Daniel had organized his entire life around this irrational belief. Every goal was designed to generate approval. Every action was calibrated to create admiration. He was not living his life. He was performing it. And the performance was killing his ability to connect. Because here is the paradox. The more you seek connection, the less you find it. The more you need attachment, the more you repel it. The more you want a woman to bond with you, the more she senses your want and pulls away. Daniel had to stop wanting. But how do you stop wanting something you have wanted your entire life? The answer was not in his mind. It was in his body. in his nervous system, in the deep patterns that had been programmed into him since childhood. Changing those patterns would require something more than insight. It would require pain. Daniel made a decision. He would stop dating completely. Not as a tactic, not to make himself more attractive. He genuinely withdrew from the entire game. For 6 months, he did not pursue a single woman. He did not go on apps. He did not ask for numbers. He did not try. He just stopped. At first, this felt like defeat, like giving up, like admitting he could not win. But something strange happened in that space. Daniel started noticing his urges, the constant pull toward validation, the reflexive need to be seen, the craving for female attention that had been running in the background of his mind for as long as he could remember. He watched these urges without acting on them. He felt the discomfort of not getting what he wanted, and he stayed in that discomfort. Nietzsche wrote about the death of old values as necessary for the birth of new ones. The old self must die before the new self can emerge. Daniel was killing his old self, the self that needed approval, the self that performed for attention, the self that measured his worth through female response. This was not easy. There were nights when loneliness felt like it would break him. Nights when he almost opened the apps, almost sent the texts, almost went back to the game. But he held. He stayed. He let the old patterns die. Jung described this process as confronting the shadow. The parts of ourselves we have denied must be acknowledged and integrated. Daniel's shadow was his neediness, his desperation, his fear that without external validation, he was nothing. He had to feel that fear completely. He had to let it wash through him without running from it. Only then could he begin to dissolve it. During this period, Daniel started a meditation practice, not to become more attractive, not to improve himself for women, simply to understand his own mind. He sat every morning for 40 minutes, watching his thoughts, watching his cravings, watching the endless stream of wanting that ran through his consciousness. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the mind is a fortress. No one can enter without your permission. Daniel began to understand what this meant. His emotional state had been controlled by external events, by women's responses, by their approval or rejection. Now he was taking back control, not by suppressing his emotions, by observing them without being ruled by them. This is the Stoic path, not emotionless, not cold, but undisturbed by what cannot be controlled. 3 months into his withdrawal, something shifted. Daniel noticed that he was not thinking about women constantly. The craving had quieted, not disappeared, but lost its grip. He went to a dinner party. A woman there was attractive, intelligent, interested. A year ago, Daniel would have been calculating, strategizing, trying to figure out how to make her like him. Now he just talked to her, present, relaxed, not performing, not seeking anything, just existing in the conversation without agenda. She leaned in. She asked for his number. She pursued. Daniel was confused. He had done nothing, no techniques, no impressive displays. He had just been there, fully there. That was the first clue. Presence without agenda was more powerful than performance with intention. But Daniel was not ready to date yet. He recognized that one experience did not mean he had changed. The patterns ran deep. They would resurface under pressure. He spent another 3 months in withdrawal, training himself to exist without external validation, learning to be complete alone. Plato wrote about the cave, the prisoners who see only shadows and mistake them for reality. When one prisoner escapes and sees the sun, He cannot go back to believing in shadows. Daniel was escaping the cave. The shadow he had chased was female validation. He had believed that capturing it would make him real. Now he saw that it was just a shadow, a projection, nothing of substance. The real substance was inside him, his relationship with himself, his ability to stand in his own presence without needing anyone else. This sounds abstract. It was not abstract for Daniel. It was physical. He could feel the difference in his body. The nervous, seeking energy had settled. The constant low-grade anxiety had quieted. He occupied space differently, moved differently, spoke differently. Robert Greene writes about the power of self-containment. The person who does not need anything from you has power over you. Not aggressive power, attractive power, the power of sufficiency. Daniel was becoming sufficient, complete, whole. And that wholeness was about to be tested. Because after 9 months of withdrawal, Daniel met someone who could have pulled him back into his old patterns, someone who forced him to prove whether he had actually changed or just hidden from his problems. Her name was Claire, and she would show Daniel exactly how far he had come and how far he still had to go. Daniel met Claire at a bookstore. She was reading a collection of essays he recognized. He said something about the author. She responded. They talked for an hour. Claire was different from the women Daniel usually pursued. 32 years old. Worked as a translator. Lived simply. Beautiful, but not in an obvious way. The kind of woman who became more attractive the longer you looked at her. Daniel felt something shift when they talked. The old machinery wanted to start up. The performing, the impressing, the seeking. But he watched it instead of acting on it. He noticed the urge and did not obey. He asked for her number casually, without attachment to whether she gave it. She did. They made plans for coffee. On their first meeting, Daniel practiced what he had learned. Presence without agenda. He was not trying to make Claire like him. He was just there, curious, interested, complete. Claire responded to something in him. She opened up faster than she normally would. She told him later that she felt safe, that he was not trying to take anything from her. This is what Schopenhauer meant about the will. When your will is not grasping, when you are not trying to possess, people relax in your presence. They do not feel hunted. They do not feel like prey. Daniel and Claire began seeing each other. And here is where the test intensified. After their 4th date, Claire pulled back. She did not text for 3 days. When Daniel reached out, her response was short, distant. The old Daniel would have panicked, would have analyzed the texts, would have tried harder, would have asked what was wrong, would have chased. The new Daniel noticed his urge to chase, felt it fully, and did not act. He gave Claire space, not as a strategy, because he genuinely believed that if she was not interested, that was information. He did not want to convince someone to be with him. He wanted someone who chose him freely. Epictetus taught that we suffer when we try to control what is not in our control. Other people's feelings are not in our control. Their choices are not in our control. Daniel could control only his own state, his own response, his own way of being. So he remained steady. He did not withdraw coldly. He did not punish Claire for pulling back. He simply continued being himself. Available but not desperate. Interested but not needy. A week later, Claire reached out. She apologized. She said she had been scared. She said she was not used to feeling so much so quickly. She said most men would have pressured her by now. Daniel had passed the first test. But there was a harder test coming. 2 months into seeing each other, Daniel discovered that Claire had been messaging her ex, a man she had been with for 4 years, a man she said she was over. Daniel found out by accident. He was not snooping. He saw a notification on her phone, a name, a heart emoji. The old Daniel would have confronted her immediately, would have made it a crisis, would have demanded explanations, would have let his insecurity flood the relationship. The new Daniel paused. He felt the anger, the fear, the old wound from Rachel opening up again. But he did not react from that wound. He waited until he was calm. Then he asked Claire about it directly, without accusation, without desperation. Claire admitted she had been talking to her ex. She said he had reached out. She said she had responded out of habit. She said it meant nothing. Daniel had a choice: trust or leave. There was no middle path that preserved his dignity. He chose to trust, but with a boundary. He told Claire that he understood the complexity of old relationships. He told her he was not interested in controlling who she talked to. He also told her that if she wanted to explore something with her ex, he would step back without anger. But he would not share her. That was not the relationship he wanted. This is what Machiavelli meant by appearing merciful while being firm. Daniel was not punishing Claire. He was not threatening her. He was simply stating his terms. Take them or leave them. Claire chose to take them. She cut off communication with her ex that night. She chose Daniel. And something happened in that moment. Claire's attachment deepened. Not because Daniel had won a competition, because he had shown her something rare. A man who valued himself enough to walk away, but was secure enough to trust. This combination is what Robert Greene calls strategic indifference. Not coldness, not manipulation. Genuine sufficiency that allows for openness without neediness. Daniel had achieved something that took most men a lifetime to understand. He had become desirable by becoming complete, not by changing his external circumstances, by transforming his internal state. But the deepest test was still ahead. The test that would prove whether his transformation was real or just well-practiced performance. Because Daniel was about to face every man's deepest fear. And how he handled it would determine everything. 8 months into their relationship, Claire got an offer. A translation position in another country. A significant career opportunity. She would be gone for a year. She told Daniel over dinner. Her voice was careful. She was watching him, waiting to see how he would react. The old Daniel would have seen this as abandonment, as rejection disguised as opportunity. He would have asked her not to go, would have made it about himself, would have tried to hold on. The new Daniel felt the fear rise, the old pattern trying to assert itself. The voice in his head saying, "This means she does not love you enough. You are losing her. Do something." He let the fear move through him without acting on it. He breathed. He stayed present. Then he told Claire the truth. He told her he was proud of her. He told her she should go. He told her he would miss her, but he would not ask her to stay. Claire started crying. She said no one had ever responded like that. Every man she had been with would have made it about them, would have guilted her, would have demanded she choose. Daniel was not demanding anything. He was giving her freedom, and that freedom made her want to stay. They spent the next month discussing options, long distance, visits, the structure of how they would maintain connection. But the dynamic had shifted. Claire was no longer testing Daniel's commitment. She was investing in it. She was planning how to include him in her future. She was building toward something. This is what Freud called cathexis, the investment of emotional energy in a person or object. When someone invests, they become attached. The investment itself creates the bond. Daniel had triggered Claire's investment by not chasing it. By being complete enough to let her go, he made her want to stay. By valuing himself enough to accept loss, he made himself invaluable. Jung would call this the integration of opposites. Daniel held both desire and detachment. He wanted Claire but did not need her. He loved her but would survive without her. This paradox is the core of genuine attraction. Most men cannot hold this paradox. They collapse into need. Their wanting becomes grasping. Their love becomes possession. And women sense the trap closing and pull away. Daniel had learned to want without grasping, to love without possessing, to be present without being desperate. Claire took the position abroad. They maintained their relationship across distance, and something happened that Daniel did not expect. Claire became more attached, not less. The space created longing. The longing created investment. The investment created bonds. When Claire returned after 9 months, she moved in with Daniel. Within a year, they were engaged. Daniel reflects on his transformation now. He understands that nothing external changed. Same career, same apartment, same body, same life. What changed was invisible, but felt. He stopped seeking validation. He stopped performing for approval. He stopped measuring his worth through female response. He became complete in himself. And that completeness was what Claire attached to. Nietzsche wrote about becoming who you are, not becoming what others want you to be. Daniel had spent his 20s becoming what he thought women wanted. His 30s taught him to become himself. And ironically, becoming himself was what women actually wanted. This is the dark psychology of attachment. It operates below conscious awareness. It cannot be fooled by performance. It responds to reality, not presentation. A man who needs validation will always struggle with women, no matter how much he achieves, no matter how perfect his presentation. His need will leak through every interaction and repel the attachment he seeks. A man who is complete will attract attachment naturally, not through effort, not through strategy, through being. His internal state will trigger responses in women that no tactic can manufacture. Schopenhauer understood this. He wrote that we love not the object, but our own projection onto the object. What women project onto complete men is their deepest ideal, the animus, the archetype, the father and protector and lover combined. You cannot fake this. You can only become it. Daniel became it. Not through reading books, not through learning techniques, through the painful process of killing his old self and building a new one. And now he lives in a reality most men do not believe exists. A reality where women pursue him, where they invest in him, where they attach to him without him trying. This is not magic. It is psychology, dark psychology. The mechanisms that operate beneath the surface of human behavior. Understanding these mechanisms is powerful, but understanding is not enough. You must do the work. You must confront your own need, your own shadow, your own desperate hunger for validation. That confrontation is painful. Most men avoid it their entire lives. They keep performing, keep seeking, keep wondering why nothing works. But for the few who face themselves honestly, who do the internal work, who become complete, everything changes. Let me tell you what Daniel's story means for you. Not in abstract principles, in concrete reality. There is a mechanism inside women that decides attachment. It has nothing to do with what you have. Your money, your status, your accomplishments, your looks. These can attract attention. They cannot create bonds. The mechanism responds to your internal state, your relationship with yourself, your degree of completeness, your presence or absence of need. When you need validation from women, you will not get attachment from women. The need itself repels what it seeks. This is not moral. It is mechanical, like gravity. You cannot argue with it. You can only understand it and work with it. Machiavelli knew this. He wrote that fortune favors the bold, but he also wrote that boldness without wisdom is recklessness. The wisdom here is understanding what creates attraction. The boldness is having the courage to transform yourself. Most men lack this courage. They keep doing what has always failed. Performing, impressing, seeking, chasing. They get the same results and wonder why. Daniel stopped chasing. He went inward. He confronted the parts of himself he had spent years hiding. He killed his need for external validation, and he rebuilt himself as something new. This is the path of individuation that Jung described: becoming whole, integrating the shadow, achieving self-possession. It is not easy. It was not designed to be easy. It is designed to transform. The men who take this path become magnetic, not through techniques, through being. Their presence itself triggers attraction. Their completeness itself creates bonds. Robert Greene calls it the law of covetousness. People want what they cannot have. But it goes deeper. People want what does not need them, because what does not need them must be valuable. When you stop needing women, you become valuable to women. When you become complete in yourself, you become desirable to others. When you achieve internal sufficiency, external abundance follows. This sounds like paradox. It is paradox. But human psychology is built on paradox. The more you chase, the more you repel. The more you release, the more you attract. Albert Ellis identified this in his therapy. He called it paradoxical intention. The cure for anxiety about a thing is often to stop trying to avoid the thing. The cure for desperation in dating is to stop being desperate. But you cannot pretend not to be desperate. You must actually become not desperate. That requires work. Real work. Not reading articles, not watching videos. Work on your internal state. Work on your relationship with yourself. Work on killing the needy parts of you that repel what you want. Epictetus said that we are disturbed not by things, but by the views we take of things. Your view of yourself determines how women view you. If you see yourself as incomplete, without female validation, women will sense that incompleteness and be repelled. If you see yourself as complete, whole, sufficient, women will sense that sufficiency and be attracted. This is not belief, it is perception. And you cannot change your perception through positive thinking. You can only change it through transformation. Daniel transformed. 9 months of solitude, 9 months of facing himself, 9 months of dying and being reborn. You may not need 9 months. You may need more. The timeline depends on how deep your need runs, how much of your identity you have built around external validation, how much you have to dismantle before you can rebuild. But the path is the same for everyone. Stop seeking validation externally. Start building completion internally. Confront your shadow. Integrate your need. Become whole. When you become whole, you will stop chasing women. Not because you lost interest, because you no longer need them to feel complete. And when you stop chasing, they will start chasing you. Not all of them. The right ones. The ones who recognize genuine completeness. The ones who are ready for real connection. That is what Daniel found with Claire. Not manipulation, not tactics. Real connection between two complete people. This is available to you, not tomorrow, not next week. When you have done the work, when you have become what you need to become. Schopenhauer wrote that life swings like a pendulum between suffering and boredom. Most men swing between desperate pursuit and empty victory. Getting the woman and feeling nothing. Losing the woman and feeling everything. Daniel stepped off the pendulum. He found stillness. And from that stillness, real love emerged. The question is whether you are willing to do what Daniel did. Withdraw from the game. Face yourself honestly. Kill the parts of you that seek validation. Rebuild from the foundation. Most men will not. They will watch this video and return to performing. Return to seeking. Return to wondering why nothing works. But some will understand. Some will see themselves in Daniel's story. Some will recognize the need that has been running their lives. Those men will begin the transformation. And when they complete it, they will live in a different reality. A reality where women attach to them naturally. Where connection happens without force. Where love arrives without chasing. That reality is waiting. The only question is whether you are willing to become the man who deserves it.